Hare Krishna to all the devotees, Dandus Pranams. So welcoming you all for today's Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Today is also Ugadi. So taking this opportunity to wish each one of you a very happy Ugadi. So today we'll play the recorded lecture of His Holiness Jayapataka Swami Maharaj. So I'll just go ahead and then share that lecture and we can all delve into the nectar. Hare Krishna. Is the audio okay? Audio and video? You can put it in the chat.
The following is a class given by His Holiness Jayapataka Swami Maharaj on January 1985 at New Taliban Farm in Carriere, Mississippi. The class begins with a reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 6th Canto, Chapter 5, Verse 40.
Prajapati Daksha continued, if you think that simply awakening the sense of renunciation will detach one from the material world, I must say that unless full knowledge is awakened, simply changing dresses as you have done cannot possibly bring detachment. Translation with repetition. Prajapati Daksha continued, if you think that simply awakening the sense of renunciation will detach one from the material world, I must say that unless full knowledge is awakened, simply changing dresses as you have done cannot possibly bring detachment. Report. Prajapati Daksha was correct in stating that changing one's dress cannot detach one from this material world. The sannyasis of Kali Yuga who change their robes from white to saffron and then think that they can do whatever they like are more abominable than the materialistic grihastas. This is not recommended anywhere. Prajapati Daksha was right in this, in pointing out this defect. But he did not know that Narada Muni had aroused the spirit of renunciation in the Haryasvas and Savalasvas through full knowledge. Such enlightened renunciation is desirable. One should enter the renounced order with full knowledge. Jnana Vairagya for the perfection of life is possible for one who renounces this material world in that way. This elevated stage can be reached very easily as supported by the statements of Srimad Bhagavatam 127. Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Janayatyasu Vairagyam Jnanam Cha Yat Ahaisukam. Translation. By rendering devotional service unto the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna, one immediately acquires causeless knowledge and detachment from the world. If one seriously engages in devotional service to Lord Vasudeva, Jnana and Vairagya are automatically manifest in one's person. There is no doubt of this. Prajapati Daksha's accusation that Narada had not actually elevated his sons to the platform of knowledge was not factual. All the sons of Prajapati Daksha had first been raised to the platform of Jnana and had then automatically renounced this world. In summary, unless one's knowledge is awakened, renunciation cannot take place. But without elevated knowledge, one cannot give up attachment for material enjoyment. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purport of text 40, chapter 5, canto 6 of the Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter entitled Narada Muni Cursed by Prajapati Daksha. So here, Daksha is continuing to give his critique or chastisement over Narada Muni's action in turning all of his sons into renounced practitioners and preachers of Krishna consciousness. Prajapati Daksha's point of view is the point of view of the very orthodox Vedavadi, Karmakandi, fruitive Grihastas. Lord Chaitanya mentioned that there are unlimited living entities which are above matter. They are Chitkona, Jiva Sukshma. The Jiva is very minute, but that infinitesimal spark of life is far more powerful even than millions of suns. It is of the spiritual potency, therefore should always be considered totally different from matter and transcendental. But in this conditioned life, that spirit soul or Jiva Atma is bound by different material bodies. So it wanders, Brahmanda Brahmite Hono Bhagyavan Jeev Guru Krishna Prasade Pai Bhakti Lota Bij. It wanders through different species, he describes, Lord Chaitanya, that first it goes into the evolution of 84 lakh species that finally comes up to the human beings. He mentions that Stava Jangam Duived, that there are two categories. Those are moving and those are immovable. Amongst the moving and the immovable, the movable is more advanced. You see, movable means things like birds and animals and so on. So amongst the moving creatures, the most elevated is the human being. But amongst the human being, there are many uncivilized. Sabor, Bodh, Javon, so on. So these type of uncivilized, you can say like tribal type, uncivilized people, aboriginal, uncultured, meat eaters and so on, who don't know about the progressive value of spiritual life. They follow some type of primitive form of religion where they accept the body to be somehow as the soul. And they don't understand about the science of reincarnation or about the existence of the spiritual world, so on. But rather they're just following some type of primitive, if any, religious principle, and basically they are in ignorance. Lord Chaitanya said, greater than those are those who understand the Vedic principles of transcendental knowledge. It is those who, at least, far from understanding, at least those who Veda mukhe mane, dharmo nahi gane. They may at least give lip service that I believe in the Vedic wisdom. Oh yes, I know. But practically speaking, they don't practice it. They don't follow. Lord Chaitanya, he put these on the lowest stratum. Those who don't practice what they preach. There may be many who say, I'm Krishna conscious devotee, or may say, I follow the Vedas, or may say, I'm a Hindu. But factually speaking, if they don't practice it, they're considered to be on the lowest stratum. At least they give some lip service, so they get some credit. Sometimes they might do something. But they're considered just a little bit above the aborigines, above the meat-eating, gross materialistic civilizations. Then, better than them, Lord Chaitanya described, were those who are karmanishta, those who follow the principles of fruitive work, the regulated principles of Vedic knowledge very carefully. Even then, they'll follow dharma, artha, kama, moksha. Religious activities for economic development, for sense gratification, ultimately for liberation. Even they are very systematically trying to achieve liberation. They understand reincarnation. But their idea is that first let me enjoy the material world. When I enjoy, I'll suffer the frustrations of material life. And that practical experience of frustration in trying to enjoy this material world, this will give me the real sense of renunciation. This is what Daksha is saying. Just by preaching to someone, that's not going to do it. They have to go out and enjoy it. They have to, in the enjoyment, and take the suffering, and this will be beneficial for them. For instance, like, say there's someone who's never had a child. So, how are they going to understand what is the suffering of giving childbirth? They say first you should get married, have a child, and then the suffering that is there during childbirth that you'll experience, then you'll lose all taste for sex life. But practically speaking, it doesn't. Material enjoyment is such that we forget the suffering and we want to go on tasting the enjoyment. Instead, of course, people, they had invented other ways of avoiding childbirth, which the pundits, sages couldn't even imagine, that the mother would be killing the child to avoid that pain, but not avoiding the enjoyment. So, Daksha, he knew, couldn't believe that people would do what they're doing today. Anyway, point is that he's on that particular stage. So he's at quite elevated stage in relation to the lower stages of life, like animal, aborigine, uncivilized people. But in spiritual life, yet there are many higher stages. It says higher than the karmanishta is the Gyani, one who's actually realized this factually by full knowledge, that this world is a place, therefore doesn't have to personally go and have his head beat against the wall. Doesn't personally have to go and be put into that type of suffering. Actually, why does Krishna give this teaching? Just like in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna in the 9th chapter describes to Arjuna, Idang tu te guyatamam abhakshami anasuyave Jnana Vijnana Sahitam Yajgatva Mokshase Suvat. That simply I'm giving you this knowledge so you can be freed from all miseries of life. I'm giving you this knowledge which is both the theoretical knowledge as well as the applied knowledge. Because you have never been envious. You're not envious soul. Anasuyavat. So, Krishna is giving though this whole education so that we can be freed from the sufferings of material life. It's not a fact that someone gives an advice, don't go over there, you might get hurt. There's a snake there. For someone he may, I won't go there. It's not that you have to experience everything. And it's not, even if someone experiences something, if they don't have any knowledge, they also won't necessarily develop renunciation. Because they don't know any alternative. They just think, well, this is life, I have to live with it. There's no alternative. You see, they develop a callous mentality, and then they counteract suffering by other artificial means, such as intoxication and so on. So that way they're not conscious of the suffering of material life, and they more or less sidestep these problems and they don't solve them. So instead of achieving liberation, they just stay on the same level, or gradually they go down, back into animal life. So Prajapati Daksha, of course, he was looking for that from that particular angle of view, the angle of view of the karma khandi. As I mentioned, higher than that is the Jnani, higher than that is the Yogi, yet higher than that is the devotee. Lord Chaitanya describes Mukti Bhukti Siddhi Kami Sakali Ashanto Krishna Bhakta Niskam Otoi Shanto. That all these desiring material elevation, liberation, or mystic powers, they're all agitated. They're all in a very disturbed type of state in different levels. They're not peaceful because they got some other motive. They're always trying to obtain some other status. But the devotee is very peaceful. He has no other desire except to render devotional service. So he's niskam. He's selfless, desireless. Therefore he is very peaceful. So we're teaching the science of self-realization through the process of devotional service. This is the Guru Parampara, the disciplic succession coming down from Narada Muni. It's not that the devotees don't have any desire. Just like today I saw on the board is the appearance of Sri Jagadish Pandit. He had tremendous desire to serve Lord Jagannath. Tremendous desire. He wanted to have a festival for Lord Jagannath in Bengal. So he carried these huge Jagannath deities all the way back from Puri, all the way up to Bengal. And somehow he also had the stick of Nityananda. I forget how he got that. And even today devotees go and they touch their head with the stick that was carried by Lord Nityananda. I think they say it was part of the danda that was broken by Lord Nityananda, Lord Chaitanya's sannyas danda. This Jagadish Pandit, he was Jagadish, he is a devotee of Jagannath. Even today you can see his Jagannath deities. Srila Prabhupada personally went to see those deities. So the devotees, they do have desires, but their desires are always devotional desires. Desire to serve Krishna. You see. Maybe even a desire to have a child, but that would be to bring a devotee into the world. And this happens sometimes, praying to Krishna. Whatever their desires are, they dovetail those desires with Krishna consciousness. Therefore we don't become desireless in the impersonal kind of void sense, where suddenly we stop thinking, feeling, and willing, and we try to become like a stone. That is the Mayavadi philosophy. You become like a stone. Stop thinking, stop feeling, and stop willing. Practically speaking, even living your death, they want you to just cease to exist. That's basically the idea. So the devotee becomes desireless in the sense that they don't desire anything separate from Krishna consciousness. Whatever desire is there, it is always dovetailed. You see. So that's very difficult for these karma khandis to understand, and even more difficult for the Gyanis. They think that sometimes they mistake that these things might be material activities. Of course, Rupa Goswami explained, quoting the Vedas, Iha yasya hiradasya karmana manasa gira nikilasvapi avastasu jivan muktasu uchyate. That someone whose on this transcendental platform of offering their thoughts, their words, their activities to Krishna is to already be considered liberated even while living. And practically you can see that for those impersonalists, even though they're living, or even the materialists, even though they're living, practically they're dead. Jivasya mityusa, there was, I forget the exact sloka, there actually a sloka like that. Even though they're walking dead. In fact, Srila Prabhupada one time was sitting in the Calcutta airport, his flight was delayed, he was watching the people rush by here and there, and he said, from the viewpoint of a pure devotee, all these people are dead. From the viewpoint of Krishna Kant, they're all dead people, they're just walking dead. None of them realize their eternal self. None of them understand that they have a spiritual identity. They're just walking as bodies, which are all heading only for death. Bodies are actually dead. Body is not alive. It is made to appear alive because of the presence of the Atma, of the soul. You take the soul out, the body is again appearing as it actually is, dead. It's due to the presence of the Atma that the body appears to be alive. So we put so much emphasis on the body and trying to make the body satisfied, the body comfortable. Rather, the body is a vehicle. We should use it to take us back to home, back to Godhead. Use it, as Prabhupada used to say, make the best use of a bad bargain. We have a material body, that means we have to suffer birth, death, old age, disease. We have to suffer different types of miseries in the material world. But at the same time, this body can also bring us to eternal happiness and liberation. So we should make the best use of a bad bargain. Just like if you get lost in the sea, you might have just a little life raft. But it's better than being there swimming with the sharks, the jaws. Better to be even in a life raft. So similarly, in this material world, having a material body is itself dangerous, but we have a human body. With this human body we can cross over the ocean. So even though we are in a material world, we should take a good use of this facility that's been given to us by Krishna. That is the facility of having this material body. Human body, whereby we can become God conscious. We can understand what is the actual purpose of life. We can engage in transcendental activity. Now here, you see, Daksha, he's again saying, well, unless one has full knowledge, they can't renounce. So, that's his basic point, that people should enjoy life and then renounce. He thinks that you can't get full knowledge just by theory. Of course, Prabhupada gives the example that sometimes if it's raining outside, you see someone getting wet, you don't have to go out in the rain yourself. You can stay inside and say, they're all getting wet, why should I go out? So, similarly in our devotional life, it's recommended that we should practice Krishna consciousness, try to understand this philosophy. We should always remain active. Now, we basically follow for organization's sake, as this is also recommended in the Shastra, although the Vaishnava is above all caste, creed, color, whatever. He's transcendental, not the body at all. So similarly, they're not really Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas or Sudras, or Sannyasi, Vanaprasti, Grihasti or Brahmachari. Actually, our real identity is where the Krishna Das, Anudas, Anudasa, we're the servant of the servant of the servant of Krishna. Jiver Sarupai, Nitya Krishna Das, we're the eternal servant of Krishna. But nonetheless, because we're living in a material world, we have to follow some system of organization. So the Vedic system is the best for progressive social as well as spiritual advancement. So, as far as possible and applicable, we do follow this basic varnashram system. at least in the transcendental sense, considering everyone to be Vaishnavas, not in the materialistic sense of birthright and so on. But considering everyone to be on the transcendental platform, but according to the different stages in their life, they follow different rules and regulations. For instance, grihastas are allowed to associate men and women. You see, husband and wife can associate together, but vanaprasthis are allowed to associate with their wife, but not for sex life, but in a type of more retired way, preparing for renunciation. So, Daksha, he's saying everyone has to go directly from brahmachari to grihastha, then in this way go through the entire stage of material life. This also is generally followed. It's not that he's that completely unorthodox. He's very orthodox. He's too orthodox. He's so orthodox he doesn't know that if one is actually inspired by Krishna consciousness, they can become so spiritually enlivened that in fact they, through full understanding of Krishna consciousness, they don't have to engage in the gross material activities, or they don't have to actually personally experience the pains and pleasures of grihastha life in order to achieve renunciation. So Srila Prabhupada, he recommended that between the ages of 25 and 30, basically, type of final decision should be made, especially at age of 30 or over. You see, whenever one gets the sense, a person should make a commitment to remain as a lifelong brahmachari, or if you can't make that commitment, then you should take grihastha life. You see, because one just can't indefinitely stay in some type of a non-committal stage. At the time of death, we have to definitely make a commitment. Are we going back to home, back to Godhead? Or are we going to stay in the material? What are we going to do? So, our whole lifetime is the preparation for spiritual realization. So, in this regard, a person has to make some kind of a commitment. Can't just remain uncommitted indefinitely. So Srila Prabhupada said that basically recommended as a guideline as a person's joining. Of course it may vary because some people join older and there are different things, but under normal circumstances, at the age of 30, one should make that commitment. If you're over 30, then you should definitely make that type of a commitment one way or the other. You can't say, well, I'll decide later, keep putting it off. Because that's not training, that's just like trying to avoid the issue. You can't avoid it indefinitely. And after 30, 35, in fact, grihastha life is not exactly the same. So if a person puts it off too far, then they may also say, well, actually, I would have been happier if I got married younger, you see. The real problem was I waited too long. Then if they think that, we'll take another birth and try it out at a younger age. You know, that's not... We should leave this world with just our mind on Krishna. We shouldn't be looking back. We shouldn't look back to see what's happening. We should be completely fixed, going back home, back to Godhead. So whatever is our position of greater strength, even then it's not like a material fall down or something like that. It's not going into daksha. I hope it's not, and it shouldn't be going, as I mentioned yesterday, into this activity like Daksha Maharaj, or Daksha rather, Prajapati, was conceiving. But rather what it is just taking the position of greater strength. Some people, they are rather stronger in renunciation. And others, they will be stronger in the association of family. Their mind will be just more peaceful. Doesn't mean that ultimately what service a person is doing, how fixed up they are in Krishna consciousness, how steady they are, That's what's going to count. Where's the energy going? If a person's in Grihastha life, but still their energy is going to Krishna, that's what counts. If a person enters into sannyas life, and if their service is not going to Krishna, if it's going into politics or into some other kind of activity, that would also be a fall down. So in all cases, the question is that, in fact, a sannyasi theoretically should not have to care for family and other responsibilities, and that side would be able to give more energy. That's the whole attraction. You can give more energy without so much material maintenance. What his family means you have to do a little more maintenance work, you see. But for some people, for some devotees, that may not be a position of strength. In fact, the mind may be so either disturbed or just not serious to get not responsible enough that even though one doesn't have that family responsibility, it doesn't also become very responsible in sannyas life. And so then the energy ultimately doesn't go to Krishna. They just kind of display. So all these things have to be analyzed. Sometimes the person may even have to discuss with senior god brothers. But that is the basic thing that also we find here Prabhupada mentioned in this particular verse, that enlightened renunciation is desirable. One should enter the renounced order with full knowledge, jnana vairagya, for the perfection of life is possible for one who renounces this world in that way. So there is impetus to do that. Actually speaking, our Grihastha devotees are entering into, if they're very careful, they're also entering into a type of renounced life as compared to what to speak of the materialists in the modern world, even compared to Prajapati Daksha's analysis, which is that you should enjoy life, and then through the enjoyment you get suffer, and then you renounce. So basically it's just being very pragmatic. Utility is the principle. Taking whatever is the strongest position for that particular devotee. Whatever decisions made, we shouldn't look back. We should just forge forward and try to give all of our energy to Krishna. The whole point is that everything we do, it should always be a very committed, determined devotional service to Krishna. This is very important, that we remain very serious in all of our activities. You see, someone who is doing devotional service without full commitment won't be getting the full result. It's like doing something without full knowledge. You don't get the full result if you do something without full commitment. Just like somebody going to college, I don't know if I'll enroll here, I just want to sit in the class and see how I like it. Even after taking initiation, if we're still not fully committing ourselves to preaching, not fully committing ourselves to Krishna consciousness, we're not fully committing ourselves, are we going to be acting in this platform of life or that platform, or what are we? We're just kind of remaining in an uncommitted state. That means that actually our mind, we're letting it have a little bit of loose rope in which it can kind of remain unsurrendered. So it's better that we tighten in the rope, you see. The point is that we have to tighten in the rope one way or another. At least before we die, we should have it totally under control. You see. The safety valves are there in the beginning of our spiritual life. Just like when someone joins, we tell them that you can do any service. Actually, they can't. Just try to somehow or another do the service which is very easy, which is very natural for you. If you like to do farming, do farming. If you like to do artwork, do artwork. If you like to do driving, then drive, teaching, whatever. And as the person becomes more advanced, as they take more and more responsibility for the spiritual master, then It says in the higher stage of devotional service, it's more important for those devotees to carry out the order of the spiritual master than simply to follow the regulated principles. Now they don't give up regulated principles, just following the Vaidhi Bhakti. For instance, by nature it might be someone's nature to be a carpenter, but the spiritual master, he may need someone to do something very urgently, and so that person learns how instead to be a typist, or how to be a preacher. You see, that's additional higher type of responsibility. When we were in India, Srila Prabhupada, of course, he wanted us to finish buildings at record time. He wanted us to finish these huge buildings, to finish this in 3 months. In fact, we had 1,600 people working at one time. We had 600 people, we were digging simultaneously a man-made lake, constructing a 75-foot, 103-room building, another 2-storied building, and a prasadam pavilion that could feed 2,000 people, all at the same time. 600 people working. 2 ships. And it looked like the pyramid. And the people going down into this man-made lake, cutting, and putting the baskets on their head, and they'd go off 10 feet, give it to the next person, it's like the whole pyramids, there's so many people working everywhere. They'd be running around all the time. Some places they build a wall where there's supposed to be a door. So, what are you doing? And the engineer was there. You had to bang, so you had to constantly be going everywhere. Even you had engineers and contractors, they still make 1,000 mistakes. Or the laborers, they try to go slow, they don't work as fast as they could. Or they try to skip on the mixes. And there's always, you have to be everywhere at the same time. Then, when you're building fast like that, there's so many things. You have to put in dirt. We have flood area there, so you have to lift the floor. But if you just put in dirt, then it's not settled. When the first rains come, the moisture will go in and the whole floor will cave down. Because you can't just pile up more than 4 inches of dirt at a time. Those air pockets in there, when moisture hits it, it settles, and then your whole floor caves in. So there's all these type of things. We had to put in sand, and we didn't have any pumps that pump in the water. All this is just like, all these things are going on simultaneously. Srila Prabhupada said, I want it done in 3 months. I'll be back here. He came in November, so I'll be back here for Gaur Purnima. I want it finished by then. It's something like that. So then, sometimes the devotee would be there, so where's he's in Mangala. What the heck is he doing there? We got a 24-hour shift now, it's 3 weeks. Get him out of there. But Prabhupada's phone, I call up at 1 o'clock, he'd be up at 1 o'clock, he said somebody been knocking on your door, you just had finished a 12 o'clock shift. Bam, bam, bam. You'd go there, and Prabhupada would say, why there's no construction going on? It's 1 in the morning. Well, Prabhupada, just up till midnight shift. He said, not 24-hour shift. And he expected you to be there all 24 hours. I don't know. It was very intense. One time, there was one government man had come in October, and then he came after Gaur Purnima, about 4 months later. And he was a little envious type of person. He was a communistic type person. He came, and I was touring him around, and he came and he saw these buildings that we had just built, in that time, 3 months. And I literally saw, he started shaking. He was literally shaking. He couldn't speak. He said, he's just like that, he's totally choked. I said, where did these come from? How did it, totally, flabbergasted. I said, we just built this. Totally, I never saw a person so shook up in my life. It was like color left his face. He said, it would take us 3 years just to get permission from the government to build these. To get the budget approved, you know, and it'll take 5 years to build it. How did you do it? He just walked off holding, he was just speechless, you know. He couldn't imagine that, you know, it was beyond his conception that it could even be done. To mobilize, you know, that many men, I mean, you know, they can't even dream of that. Normally, even the government, they just do something, you know. In India, I mean, you know, very gradually, to say the least. So, I mean, I didn't think it was a promise within 3 months that to do it, so he just did it, whatever it took. But then, you know, when I saw that person's reaction, I could realize that for India, that was something very amazing. You know, once we got off that war schedule, of course we went right back to our normal, you know, activities. But during that intense period, I mean, that was more important to carry out Prabhupada's order to us than the, you see, normal routine that we're going through. Of course, then you develop, you know, habits like that, so that, you know, when there isn't such a war type of, you know, intense situation, you have to again go back into normal activities and routines and everything like that, because that's a very strong position. That's a good example as well. But we are going into these different kinds of situations, so that's also a type of level that in a higher stage of devotional service, it's actually mentioned next to devotion, that carrying out the order of the Guru takes precedent over any other consideration. If the Guru orders you that you have to do this particular service, that's more important. But in the beginning, therefore, we don't give any special orders to neophyte devotees, because what they need to do is just be very steady in all of their practices and let their mind become very peaceful. Once they develop a taste for devotional service, even this intense pressure given because of their commitment to serving the spiritual master, that will carry them over all the obstacles. You see. So, the point is that there has to be that commitment developed. And as we are going closer and closer towards changing our body, we should gradually have a full commitment. We shouldn't allow our mind to just stay in some type of nebulous state where we're not committed. We should gradually come up, just as the bhakta, they come in, they first look and see, let me test it out, let me see if this is what I want, or maybe decide this is really what I want, but now they get trained up. Then they become more and more convinced, their faith increases, they see actually this is what I want, this is going to give me my spiritual emancipation or spiritual life, this is making me happy, this is making me peaceful. Alright, there may be these obstacles, but these are the different stages we go through. And then they take a commitment, they take initiation, that's their first commitment. So the spiritual master just gives basic general principles, 4 regular principles, chant your 16 rounds, attend all the temple programs. They gradually take a little more responsibility. Maybe sometime they do Sankirtan, or sometimes gradually they may even become like a temple commander, then they may in some places even become in more and more responsible positions of devotional service. In this way, devotional life goes on. When we become spontaneously committed to Krishna, we're in anxiety and we're actually identifying with our service to Krishna and the spiritual master, that spiritual anxiety or spiritual concern actually keeps us satisfied. It's not the same as the material anxiety, because in there is actually a type of loving exchange with Krishna where we are so firmly identified with Krishna that our interest and Krishna's interest are one. Therefore that service, that commitment is on the transcendental platform. Therefore Krishna says that I am the heart of my devotees, and my devotees' heart, she said, I am in the heart of my devotees, and my devotees are in my heart. My heart is my devotee, and the devotee's heart is me. So therefore we feel in the presence of the pure devotee, the presence of Krishna. And Krishna is saying, yes, and when you are in my associate, you'll feel that in my heart I am the devotee. That's what he said when the 4 Kumaras came, or when Durvasa Muni came. That in my heart I keep the devotee. No separatism. It's a total unity. That whatever Krishna's interest, that is the devotee's interest. And if the devotee wants something because he's so thoroughly in tune with Krishna, that also is Krishna's desire. That for Krishna, he also tries to fulfill the desire of the devotee. Because the desire of the devotee is just another manifestation of Krishna's own desire, only applied in a specific circumstance. So, at that time, that devotee is not in the material world. It's nothing to do with karma. It's only acting on behalf of Krishna. So gradually we try to come up to that platform by trying to come into more and more responsible positions of devotional service, being committed to serving the spiritual master in different ways, being very careful to always keep our mind on a progressive path of spiritual renunciation in the real sense, in the sense of trying to act for the pleasure of Krishna in every circumstance. The devotee doesn't rest on the laurels, so to speak, alright, I went through all these campaigns, so now I can relax, because our devotional service never ends. We don't have any other desire. If we're doing devotional service to get liberation, then we think, alright, I did enough, now by this time I should get liberated, now I can sit back. I'll get to the heavenly planets, I can just coast now and just somehow or another, I'm well ahead of the pack. If I just kind of coast, I'll win the marathon. But because our desire is not like that, we don't have a separate desire. At least the pure devotees, they don't have a separate desire. The desire is to please Krishna, so it just keeps scoring higher and higher and higher, the intensity, until it goes so intense that even Krishna himself is forced to come to that devotee. It's like Narada Muni, when he was just a small child, he was chanting so intensely, he was crying, and Krishna appeared to him. Dhruva Maharaj, he became so intense in his desire to see Narayana, that Narayana personally came. And sometimes the Brajavasis, like Radharani's love for Krishna sometimes is so intense that Krishna can no longer hide himself, he has to come forward. When it reaches like, what do they call that, the ultimate mass, critical mass, the intensity of devotion becomes so intense, so deep, that even Krishna himself he's overwhelmed. They have so much devotion for me. What can I do for them? And the devotee doesn't want anything separate. So I just want to please you, Krishna. So then Krishna, he allows more service. Alright. And this way it goes on. That's the mood of Vrindavan. That's the difference. That's why the Vrindavan pastimes are actually so intense.
Busy professionals, if you are over 30, struggling to get in shape,
Hare Krishna. So that actually concluded the lecture from His Holiness Jayapataka Swami Maharaj. It was a very expressive lecture as usual from Maharaj, which never fails to impress. Maharaj actually started off by diving straight into the matter of renunciation, about how it is not just about the change of dress to saffron. It is not just an external change that is required, or that is what generally people do, but how it is more internal first, and then the external change that happens in the matter of renunciation. So he was taking the example of the change of dress to saffron, which is sannyasi dress. So then Maharaj also spoke about how devotional service to the Lord brings about both jnana and then vairagya. which is a high point of sannyasa ashram. Then Maharaj also spoke about the various types of living entities. So he started off by saying how there are these aboriginal tribal people where the consciousness is so different. And from there, in the human being spectrum itself, we move on up to the Aryans. And then within that, then you have the various ashramas or the Varnas, sorry, so which is the Brahmanas, and then beyond that is the Vaishnava. So he was bringing out that, and then he said that the progressive path of spiritual renunciation has to be in stages with advancement in jnana or in the understanding of the philosophy, and then with renunciation or giving up. He also said about how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also brought out or touched upon this topic, and he said how regulations and scriptures they are also in the bodily platforms only. So somebody might be very pious, but then they are doing it for sense gratification. So then Mahaprabhu also pointed out this particular flaw which is there. And then Maharaj concluded by saying that this is not recommended. And then Maharaj was giving a vivid description of the types of people based on the consciousness and the intelligence, and how all are eventually, actually suffering. That's because of the body. And then he also said that the body is the cause of all the suffering, but then it is also the vehicle for liberation. So he famous phrase from Prabhupada, where he said we'll have to make the best use of a bad bargain. So the bad bargain is we've got this body, which is the cause of all the suffering. But how to make a best use of it is by using the body or using our energy, all of it in the service of the Lord. And then using our intelligence and our mind in understanding the philosophy, so on and so forth. So in this way, though we are in the Varnashrama, then we'll have to outgrow the Varnashrama and then go beyond the concept of I'm a Vaishya, Grihastha, Brahmana, Kshatriya, etc., to the point where we begin to feel that we are servant of the servant of the servant of the servant, Dasa, 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 Anudasa. So that's the point that Maharaj was making. And this is a journey that all of us will have to make. So the prime thing is change in the consciousness, which is the essence of all types of renunciation. So enlightened renunciation is the way to go. So that's the conclusion. And everything we do should be devoted, committed, and enthusiastic in devotional service. So the quality of devotional service also, it should be, Maharaj was touched upon, where he said it should be devoted, it should be committed, and then we should also be enthusiastic. And then, so we begin with doing things which we like to do, which are easy to do, and then move on to the point where we just carry out the orders of the spiritual master rather than trying to say whether I like it or not. So this is with respect to the service. Maharaj was making that point. And then he says the main thing is to carry out the order of the spiritual master. That's all. And then that should take place. Then that should take precedence over all other hankerings of the mind, of our mind. So these are some of the points. And then he said, like, we'll always have to keep in mind the progressive path of spiritual renunciation. So we know this progressive path of spiritual renunciation. So that should be always in our minds. So these are some of the wonderful points that Maharaj mentioned. So stop here. And then if anybody has any comment, then please go ahead. Any reflections, anything that they want to add, we would love to hear from you all. Hare Krishna. Over to you, devotees. Okay.
So
Yes,
thank you
Hare
for,
Krishna.
yeah, thank you for actually playing Marat's class today on his English date of appearance. So thank you for that. And Maharaj, in fact, I like the way he put it across to say, it goes step by step. It's not like you have to take a deep dive. And he made it very practical, like what Prabhupada says, it's very practical of start getting it, and then, you make a progression over a period of time. Things begin to happen, you experience it yourself. So that is a very important point, I mean, for me also, it gives you the confidence that you are on the right track or path, and it really helps. So that was a very nice point. Thanks for playing this class. Thank you, Central Prabhu and Prasanna Prabhu. Thank you.
Yeah. So we should thank Shankarshan Priya Prabhu for this. So I was only playing it, that's all. I'm doing the postman's job. So thank you, Prabhu, for sharing that. So anyone else wants to say anything? Please go ahead. Okay. So I think everybody is in a very reflective mood. Surprising.
Thank you, Prabhu, for making us listen to Guru Maharaj voice on this Ugadi day. Thank you for the whole team, Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Dadapana.
That was pronounced. Thank you. So I think we can conclude today's session. Once again, wishing everyone a very happy Ugadi and offering obeisances to all Vaishnavas. Vancha kalpatrubhyasya kripa sindhubhyev cha paditana pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo namo namaha. Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. His Holiness Jayapataka Swami Maharaj ki jai. Thank you. Have a wonderful day. I'll end the session for all. Hare Krishna.